You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome to Let's Talk Business. My name is Kelly Bolton. Thank you so much for joining us today as we welcome Karolina Calhoun, Vice President with Mercer Capital. With an integrated suite of services, Mercer Capital offers their clients in-depth support for both valuation and financial advisory services. So please join me as I welcome Karolina Calhoun to Let's Talk Business. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Kelly.
I have heard about Mercer Capital for my many years at Merrill Lynch, and I'm so glad to finally get one of you guys on the show.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is your position at Mercer?
I'm a vice president at Mercer Capital, and I oversee business valuations, corporate transaction advisory services, litigation, and other financial advisory services.
That's a lot.
It sure is.
Do you sleep?
I try.
It doesn't sound like you get much sleep. That is quite a mouthful. I wasn't quite expecting that. Now, well, what did you study? What's your background to get into this?
That's a great question. I went to Rhodes College here in Memphis for my undergraduate and graduate degrees. My undergraduate concentration was in business and economics, and I did my master's in accountancy at Rhodes College. After Rhodes, my full-time career started with Ernst & Young, now referred to as E&Y, in their audit and assurance services. Prior to my full-time career, I like to say that I was very involved in internships within the Memphis community, in the finance and wealth management community, with investment banking and business valuation internships.
That's great. So you've spent a lot of time you've been educated in Memphis, and you've stayed in Memphis, which is wonderful, because you know we like when people stick around. I mean, because it makes Memphis and Shelby County a better place.
Absolutely.
So what was it that inspired you to end up in this part of the business that you studied?
Well, when I mentioned my internships, one of them was at Mercer Capital, and I was so interested in the advisory services and the consulting and valuation and litigation services. And after I worked at Ernst & Young in the public accounting world, I thought it was a great time to transition into a more specialized financial service offering, which, as you can infer, we do definitely provide so many different services at Mercer Capital.
Well, that's interesting. Well, what kind of credentials do you have to be a business valuation expert?
There's many credentials out there, and my colleagues at Mercer Capital have a few different ones than I do, but I myself am a CPA, which you're probably familiar with. Also hold the ABV credential, which stands for Accredited Business Valuator, and the CFF, which is Certified in Financial Forensics. So that opens up the door to forensic services. Both of those are administered through the AICPA, so it's a national service offering, and we also have ASAs and CFAs among other credentials at Mercer.
Yeah. Tell me about some of the leadership roles that you've played in Memphis. I know it kind of goes back to your days when you were at Rhodes in college and grad school. So, but you've been really involved, and now you're involved you're a leader of some type of CPA organization, right?
Right. I'm the president-elect of the Memphis chapter of the Tennessee Society of CPAs, and I'm also involved on a national level with the valuation and forensics community. So I am on the AICPA, which is the national organization. I'm involved in their Forensics and Valuation Services Conference Committee. So it's really an awesome opportunity, and I'm honored that I get to connect with national thought leaders in this industry.
That's cool. Well, I'll tell you, I have always thought forensics are interesting, and when you take forensics and apply it to the financial world, I mean, that's kind of exciting for me, because me being in finance, and I always love to look at numbers, and you know, I think sometimes people get a little kind of look at you a little funny when you talk about forensic accounting, like how could you make accounting a forensic science? So it's interesting. You know, If someone was out there and needed services, what kind of services would they need that would kind of lead them to you and to Mercer?
Our phone rings for a variety of services, as you mentioned after I told you a few of the overall areas that I work on. But first and foremost, business valuation is needed for corporate transactions, for M&A, for marital dissolutions, the valuation of a business where one party might be the business owner. We have regular recurring clientele of businesses that have ESOPs. They have recurring valuations. They're also, for the sale of a business, there's also the transfer of business interests. So that might be in the case of a death or in the case of succession planning, gifting to the next generation, or even just a buyout of a percentage of a business ownership interest. Those particular scenarios call for valuation needs, as well as litigated matters, which we'll get to a little bit later. We also help with buy-sell agreements, so that's an opportunity for us to work with both attorneys and business owners and management. We're involved in the formation of those agreements, but also the execution, and then brought in for those triggering events that call for business valuation experts, like I mentioned, transfer of business interests or a death or a divorce.
Interesting. Well, I know obviously we're talking a little bit about the financial advisory services, but you mentioned litigation. Are y'all attorneys?
We're not.
So where do you get involved in the litigation process?
The litigation process is also wide and varying for us. An area that forensics and business valuation comes into play is litigation, particularly in family law, in shareholder disputes, so oppressed shareholders, dissenting shareholders, in commercial damages, so economic damages, lost profits, a variety of needs that call for financial expertise in addition to those attorneys.
That makes sense. So you're not actually litigating, you're almost, for lack of a better word, you're the expert, not witness necessarily, but you're the expert that's providing valuations that are needed during litigation.
Absolutely, but we actually are also qualified experts. We have quite a few financial experts in our wheelhouse, and I myself am also one of them.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. We're going to pause for a few moments for a short break. When we come back, we will resume our informative discussion with Karolina Calhoun of Mercer Capital and the incredible value-added services they provide to the business community.
We're running a 24-hour broadcast television station like no other school has done.
It is student run, it's student produced, it is student written, and it's student directed.
Here's to another 35 more years.
Students here get immersed in lots of different types of shows so that when they go out into the real world or to college, if this is what they want to pursue, they are so prepared.
Those lessons have also affected me in the ways that I would never even imagine.
It has shown me to be different and to, not settle for mediocrity. When you're producing a show, you want your show to be the best one it can be. You want it to be a show to remember, a show that you want to look back on and say, I did that.
Yes, I did do this. Did I believe that I could do this? No, but because of all the support that I gained, I know that I can actually get this done.
I know that the skills I've learned here is something I'm never going to forget, and same with the experiences here.
From all of us here at GHS-TV, have a great day.
This place, it's extremely unique.
You are pushed to do things that you didn't know you could do because someone else saw it in you.
If you're with us for your whole 4 years here at GHS, you get a great foundation of amazing classes.
Try the priest.
The approach we take to whether it's the fall play or the spring musical is that the students are truly the ones that are making the magic happen.
Tell all the people. You put the work in off and on stage. Not only are you on stage acting and playing a part, you're working, you're pricking your fingers, sewing the costumes. You're learning how to make exotic makeup designs. You're learning how to build the set that you're going to be planted on.
And as you grow with us within the program, your skills continue to develop, and we build off your previous knowledge. And hopefully by the time you graduate, you're a well-rounded professional in a way, and you can move into any area that you'd like after high school and succeed.
For more information about the CAPA program, visit ghscapa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Business. If you're just tuning in, I am Kelly Bolton, and today we have Karolina Calhoun, Vice President with Mercer Capital, as our guest. Today we've been discussing the many aspects of business valuation and corporate transactions. So let's get back to talking business. And I have to apologize, as I went to the break earlier, I pronounced your name wrong. I want to call you Karolina, but it's Karolina, and you told me your name is Polish, right?
I am.
Yes, so I'm probably going to mess it up again, so I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm sorry. But before we took a break, we were talking about litigation, and y'all actually serving as an expert witness. So it's you know, as you were talking, I found it really interesting, all the different ways that valuation services are needed, and in so many aspects, as you were kind of listing them off. In my head, it's, I want to sell my business.
Right.
But it's not always that. So I thought maybe we'd take a deeper dive into like the actual valuation process. You know, first of all, just what is a business valuation? What do you do? How is it done? What is it?
Yeah.
I mean, we own a business, I'm sure in our mind, we all have a value we think it is, which sometimes could be inflated and sometimes deflated. But
right. Well, the value of a business today is just like a stock. It's the present value of all your future expected benefits. So I like to step back and provide that stock analogy to whomever I'm talking about, because it really gives us a relation to what's business valuation of a private business. So your stock price today for any public company is reflective of how that company is doing right now. How has the company performed in the past? What's its financial condition? How is management adhering to corporate strategy? And it's also in response to their future anticipated financials. So if you have ever listened into an earnings release and your stock price before that earnings release is $10, and the management of the company says, well, we've blown through our expectations and we're performing better than we thought, and we've actually changed our expectations for next year, we've increased them, then that stock price goes up because they're considering the change of events, what has impacted in the future, what's impacting the price today, the knowledge from future expectations.
And that makes sense because, you know, a lot of times people, you know, they buy and sell stock, but they don't stop to really think they're buying a piece of a company. And all the pieces out there put together are the value of that company.
Right.
So when the stock price goes up, it means we think the company is more valuable for whatever reason. Now,
right.
I guess with the stock market, there is still some supply, demand, panic, and that sort of thing, which you don't see with private valuations. But, you know, when you're evaluating a business, you talked about all those type of things, finances that drive it. But is there any part of that evaluation that would come from goodwill, just the reputation of the company, things that are not as quantifiable?
Sure, and I'll answer your question in a couple parts if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
So the quantifiable components are a fundamental part of our analysis, because we look back into the historical financials, how that company has performed in relation to how it's performing now, and we also use that as a building block to understand what the company might do going forward, especially when we evaluate projections that might come our way. That creates a basis as to which we can compare. And and they're quantifiable numbers, but we really like to understand the story behind them, and that comes in those non-quantifiable factors that you're asking about. So when I go into a valuation, I have, even after I look at the financials, I have an idea of a little bit of the business cycle that the business might be in. Is it stable? Is it mature? Are the inputs to its pricing, if it produces a product, volatile? And I can use all that when I'm speaking with management or speaking with the client or the attorney or the business owner, whoever is the client. And we even like to step back and do a SWOT analysis. If you've ever heard of a SWOT analysis.
No, tell me about it.
It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we really like to have conversational communication with our clients, because at the end of the day, communication sometimes really helps us understand what's behind those numbers, the story that I was telling you about. So what relationships does the client have with its customers? Are there lots of key customers? Is one customer making up 90% of its revenue? How about its suppliers? Is there a contract in place? Is there a key contract in place that maintains pricing the way that it is into the future? How has management performed over time? If we can get our hands on budgets and how they've performed actual versus budget, we can assert if management is good at guesstimating the future. And we can also look into the industry that company is in and try to assert, well, how do you relate to your peers, to your competition? And on the grander scale, we look at the macroeconomic factors that impact the business and how that business has either responded or lack thereof response to what's going on in the economy. And as you're aware, that can change from what decade we're in and how well that specific client is responding, and how its goods are either a commodity or a luxury. So that changes our analysis and allows for us to have a story behind the numbers.
Well, is there any part of that, I mean, so I'm hearing you talk about the numbers and some of the goodwill type things, but what about actually supply demand? How does supply demand, if you have a very profitable business that looks good, but there's no demand for it, is that factored in? Or I'll use maybe technology. I mean, technology companies, just in the stock market, sometimes it's just driven up on, you get irrational expectations and irrational fears going both directions. But in a business, when you're evaluating it, are you evaluating it for what you really think it's worth, or is there any emotional component, supply-demand component that goes into that valuation?
We definitely evaluate all the moving pieces. So then the factors from the supply and the demand for the product itself, how impactful are the sales management perhaps at that IT company, if there is a non-compete in place for the key sales management.
Right.
So all these external, what seem to us as external factors, do actually drive
that aren't really just in the numbers, it's getting to know the business.
Getting to know the business, the strategy, the operating effectiveness historically and going forward. And we do work with PE firms and venture capitalist clients and startups. So understanding the different business cycles and different industries, really our expertise and our experience does help us to better evaluate those, because we do have a diverse range of clients and industries.
Well, that makes sense. We're going to pause now for a short break. When we return, we will finish up this lively discussion.
Every day is different, every day is a new piece of music. It's a large program. We have 3 full choral ensembles, a women's chorus, chorale, which is about 55 students, and our chamber choir, which is about 18.
There have been lots of opportunities to audition, which have encouraged me to be more confident with myself and really put myself out there.
I really enjoyed my time being in choir, especially here at Germantown, because I feel like there's something special about this particular school.
I like them to walk into my room and feel as though they are free to experiment with sounds.
How beautiful can you make German? That's the challenge.
We always say that we're a school of excellence, and I feel that that really shows like in performances, because we're all so focused in trying to reach our goals.
For more information about the CAPA program, visit GHS-Kappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Business. If you're just tuning in, I am Kelly Bolton, and today we've been joined by Karolina and talking about the incredible services that she and Mercer Capital provide to businesses and individuals. So thank you for joining us. And I know we were talking during the break. I've got a zillion more questions that I want to ask you, but I know that we're going to have just this last segment. I guess we didn't really touch on how do you go about valuing a business, and maybe you could touch on, do you find that sometimes what the business owner thinks their business is worth is very different than what it's actually worth?
Sure. So generally we value a business, how has it compared right now to its past, and how is it going into the future, and how it compares to its industry and the overall market. But more specifically, we use approaches called asset, income, and market approach. And those sort of make sense because the asset approach considers its financial position currently. Income considers earnings and cash and rates that it can grow at into the future. And the market approach, which is case by case utilized, will compare to industry peers and comparables in the public market. So to your question about clients and their perception of their value, the analysis that we do is so thorough, and we actually use the various approaches and methodologies out there to really assert what the value is. So our value may sometimes differ from what a business owner may think, because we really step back and assess all the components of the business, of the financials, and how it compares to the grander industry and market.
And I have heard over and over again businesses who way underestimated their value and their marketability. And sometimes, when they're put out for sale, you get a little competition, and sometimes people pay a premium over valuation. And I've seen over and over again people on both sides that it was worth a lot less than they thought, and others, when they went through this process of maybe selling their business, they got a lot more than they thought. So,
right. And sometimes we see that when the buyer may want strategic control or financial control of that business for purposes of consolidating in one city. I've had a client recently who acquired a competitor in prior years and then wanted to buy said company and paid a premium for it. And the reason was because they wanted to capture that market share, and they wanted to pay more.
And that's why I'm sure there's an important part of this, working with a good valuation expert along with good advice on how to market their business. I mean, how to find the right buyer.
Right.
And what opportunities do you see in your industry right now?
Well, in our industry, at our core, we're business valuation specialists, and we also offer other financial consulting and advisory services, and the litigation, even post-acquisition financial reporting assistance with the goodwill and intangible valuations. So I find opportunities in working with our clients in more than just business valuation, in preparing your company for that sale that's anticipated in a couple years, in reassessing your company's strategy, and even if you're not anticipating sale, what's your corporate strategy going forward? What's your succession planning? Many businesses privately held businesses are family owned, and if it's on a third generation, just helping facilitate those conversations. We find that those value-added services really help our existing and potential clients.
That makes sense, because I think a lot of times, I see it, you see it, they have not planned in advance, for, oh, I don't have any children that can take this over, or I have children that want to take it over, they're not capable of taking it over.
Right.
Or I wanted to retire this year, and I hadn't taken time to figure out how I'm going to exit,
Right.
What strategy should I use? So what advice would you give a business owner or somebody looking to sell their business or to have a valuation done?
Sure. I would advise to treat your business like you're treating your money. Plan and manage it in real time. Think about consulting with the professionals that are out in our community, the financial, the legal, the accounting professionals, and in real time assess your operating performance right now and into the future. And maybe there's strategies that you can take in the meantime to prepare your business for the future potential sale or private equity sale or whatever you have in mind. We at Mercer Capital also are thought leaders on a national level, and we publish articles and newsletters and blog posts and white papers. So I would encourage business owners and management clients and potential clients and even the legal community to visit our website, www.mercercapital.com. And if you're a LinkedIn follower, we publish the majority of our publications onto our business page. So connect with us and connect with our professionals. We like to share our wealth of knowledge, and we like to be thought leaders and really work with our community here and also on a national scale too.
I think that's really great advice, because I've not heard anyone say it quite like you did. I mean, as a financial professional, I'm reviewing clients' portfolios always. And I'm thinking, how do we plan for what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day? Or we're planning for retirement 15, 20 years in advance of retirement. But I don't hear as many people talk about what they're doing with their business, and that can many times be 90% or more of their net worth, on how they're getting that ready for the event. So I really thank you for that. I think this has been a great show, and you've got my mind to thinking. I've got some things I need to talk to you about. So
absolutely, I'll be happy to.
Well, great. I'd like to thank our guest, Karolina Calhoun with Mercer Capital, for being with us today. We hope you've enjoyed tuning in. To get more information about our show, please check us out on the web at GHS-TV.org, where we're streaming live 24 hours a day. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Please join us again next month on Let's Talk Business as we continue to explore the thriving business community here in Memphis.